Assassin's Promise by Thomas Woodward, Chapter 65. Henneb prowled along the outskirts of their camp. When he had come upon Stringham, he could not believe his eyes. Stringham had been a monster of a man. Henneb had seen the man disembowel others with almost careless ease. Part of him did not miss Stringham, but as terrible a man as he had also been a friend. They had shared some good times together in the saddle. Stringham had stood up for him and Dolaran when the captain tried to cut their shares of the loot short on account of being recent additions to the crew. There wasn't anyone else who had the nerve to stand up to Ranel. He had been a devil of a man, although more skilled at the position than Henneb had cared to admit. Ranel was what their crew needed, times being what they were. Henneb hadn't expected either Stringham or Ranel to die today. The bastard caravan guards should have known better than to put up a fight. Now, thanks to them for not knowing their place in the world, his crew had lost a score of men and women, nearly all of those skilled enough to sit a saddle. Only Dolaran, Kellen, and himself remained who could ride. The rest of their crew made up the families of those who had died. They even had a doctor of sorts. Irna had never actually been a doctor, but had trained as an apprentice nurse a few years back, and had helped with stitching a few patients up when the local doctor needed help. She was the best option for Miles now. Gennaral's brother Hassim acted as the crew's cook. Gennaral had been one of the first to fall today. Henneb could only guess that Hassim would be seeking vengeance. Henneb still couldn't believe it had been a woman who'd killed Stringham. The two Kellen had carried over his shoulder when he met them on the trail had been battered and bloody. Stringham must have tripped to have been taken by the little slip of a girl. On the other hand, maybe not. He had seen the blood awash on the woman's face. Maybe it hadn't been hers after all. Now that Ranel was dead, they would need to choose a new crew leader. Henneb never fancied the job himself. There were just too many people that wanted you dead. The thought had also crossed his mind that now might be the right time to cut loose from the group. Maybe he would take a turn with one of the women before grabbing what loot he and Dolaran could, and then be on their way. Kellen wouldn't join them. He could feel it in his bones. Kellen was a family man, after all, and would only slow them down. Henneb would prefer not to have to kill the man, but if he tried to stop them, well, if it came to that, he would do what was necessary. He knew Kellen was a danger with a sword, and could track them with ease. He had also seen the man take down a merchant guard at 50 paces with his longbow. Perhaps they would need to deal with him before they left. He didn't like the thought of having to look over his shoulder. He had always had a fondness for Irna anyway. Perhaps she wouldn't mind a tumble if it kept her babes safe. He finished the thought with a low chuckle. Ambling over to Dolaran's tent, he stumbled with a gait that comes from a healthy amount of drink. The smell that assaulted him from Dolaran's tent made him realize the other man was well ahead of him in that regard. Dolaran sprawled over his shoddy, mismatched set of rugs, a flask dangling from his fingers. The stink of hard drink was heavy on him. His sparse beard was dripping. The alcohol had seeped down the front of his shirt. Dolaran wiped his face with the back of a thick hand, his eyes unfocused and wandering over the interior of the tent. Dolaran was his cousin, and a good bit older than him, but Henneb liked the man. He enjoyed teaming up with him to swindle others at cards when they had the chance. Dolaran had a dark look in his eyes most days, and an unkind laugh that reminded others they were never really welcome in his presence. Dolaran had found Henneb working as a mineshaft laborer a year ago and convinced him that they could make their fortune with a good crew. The first one they had joined had been hunted down by a local magistrate. They had been pinched on a job, but they had managed to kill 2 of the constables to make their escape. It had been a turn of luck falling in with this crew. Ranel had opposed them, but Gennaral had vouched for them. It had been an uneasy peace. Henneb had hoped they could make a tidy bundle before eventually double-crossing this group. It had been going well up until recently. Easy living with no reason to kill anyone in the crew. Crews like that just didn't come together very often. It had been a nice spell. They would have backstabbed each other in the end, sure. But while the times were good, there was no reason to rock the boat.